Welcome to episode 212 of The Brainy Business, understanding the psychology of why people buy. In today's episode, I'm so excited to introduce you to Dr. Daniel Crosby. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. Before I introduce you to this week's guest, I want to take a moment to celebrate a very special anniversary. 2 days before this episode airs, on July 6th, 2022, we celebrated the 4-year anniversary of the Brainy Business Podcast. 4 years, 212 episodes, including this one, of course. And we're also dangerously close to 600,000 downloads of the podcast from over 170 countries, which is so awesome. I think there's a chance we'll hit that number when this episode releases, but it might take a little push. So if you can help me in celebrating the anniversary of the show by sharing this episode with a friend to help ensure we get over that milestone, it would be amazing and so appreciated by me. I know that it can be traditional to do kind of a best of or reflecting back on the year when you have an anniversary. I tend to do my best of episodes at the new year instead of, I guess, half year on my anniversaries. So I'm not going to get too much into past content and top moments on the podcast today. But if you want to check out the most downloaded episodes of the back catalog, do check out episodes 184, 133, and 82, which did the top content of 2021, 2020, and 2019. Those are, of course, linked for you in the show notes so you can get to them easily. And of course, when you check out those show notes, which are waiting for you at thebrainybusiness.com/212, you will also get links to other past episodes and related books, including some of those by today's guest, Dr. Daniel Crosby, as well as ways to connect with him. In the episode today, we do talk a little about his books and the work he does in behavioral science around investing, which is very cool and so relevant. As you know, investing is a time where we tend to throw logic out the window and the subconscious runs a bit rampant. But the main reason he is here today, what inspired the timing of our conversation, is that he recently had a tweet go viral, like retweeted by celebrities and millions of views from around the world. It had nothing to do with his work and seemed like a fascinating opportunity to hear what it was like to create a tweet like that and live in the space of something everyone says they want to go viral, and see what it has done for him personally, for his business, his outlook, and any insights on what this says about human behavior that we can keep in mind for all the applications in business. As I'm sure you can appreciate, this is so relevant to his work in investing and how people will randomly jump on one bandwagon over another and invest because the herd is doing so, even when they haven't done their own research. But I won't get too into it now because I want him to tell you all about it. Again, links to check out his Twitter account and get his books, The Behavioral Investor and The Laws of Wealth, which was named the best investment book of 2017, are waiting for you in the show notes at thebrainybusiness.com/212. Those already on the Brainy Business list got a direct link from me in the email you receive every Friday. Not on the list yet? Simply sign up for any freebie at thebrainybusiness.com and you'll be automatically added. The freebie for this episode is the first chapter of my award-winning book, What Your Customer Wants and Can't Tell You. And if you already have the book, in which case, thank you, you'll also be automatically added to the list when you get your copy of the free PDF companion workbook. Both are housed in our free behavioral economics community called the Be Thoughtful Revolution. There's a link to join that global community in those show notes as well. Now let's jump right in. Dr. Daniel Crosby, welcome to the Brainy Business Podcast.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Yes. So excited to have you. And as I know, is going to be in the intro for this a little bit, we are going to talk some about your work. And I want you to introduce yourself and your background of the work that you do. But the bulk of our conversation is about something that is not completely outside of the realm of what you do, but kind of a random happenstance that brought us together to have the conversation about something interesting that very few people get to actually experience. So it's nice that we happen to be connected on LinkedIn and I could ping you to come and talk about it on the show. So first, tell us all about you and what you do in this world of behavioral science.
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Behavioral Officer at Orion Advisor Solutions. We're a financial technology platform for advisors. Got about $3 trillion in assets on our software platform and tens of billions under management. So I help the good folks at Orion create technology that is architected in such a way that it induces good investor behavior. So that's really what I do, and do quite a bit of educational stuff as well, teaching advisors how to connect with and how to communicate to their clients in ways that bring about the best behaviors.
Yeah. Was investing something that you were always interested in and it just found yourself there? You know, what's that journey like?
So that journey, my dad is a financial advisor. So I grew up very interested in investing. I grew up talking about stocks around the dinner table and really just burned out, candidly, on clinical psychology. That work is so important, but it's very heavy. I had a large client caseload, all through grad school and into the early years of my career. I was working with people with some pretty heavy problems and some court-ordered folks, and I just candidly didn't manage my stress well, didn't manage my empathy fatigue and things as well as I might have, and just took work home with me to the point that I didn't see a path forward that didn't just sort of make me extremely cynical and eat me up in a real way. And so I came to my dad. I was 27 when I finished my PhD, and I was already kind of beat up, and just came to him and said, look, I love studying human behavior. Like, I love thinking deeply about why people do the things that they do, but I don't want to do it in a clinical context. And he said, there's a ton of psychology in my work. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I mean, my dad did not know the words behavioral economics, behavioral finance, but just that simple comment by him sort of set me down a path of exploring this. And, long story short, lots of writing, thinking, consulting later, I've tried to be a bridge between sort of the ivory tower and everyday practitioners like my dad who have people sitting in their office who are worried about their money. So that's been kind of where I've made my career, as being a translator from folks much smarter than me in the behavioral world and trying to apply that work to everyday financial advisors.
Very similar to the type of work that I see myself as doing, of like taking the academic research, making it applicable for people and being able to say, this is why this matters to you. This is what you can do with this, and help people to work with the science that already exists. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So just a little, so you have your two best books.
Our two best.
Most popular ones that you like to promote the most, being The Behavioral Investor and The Laws of Wealth. Can you give a little bit of insight on, the behavioral stuff? I've done an episode, so really, really early on. It was maybe 31. I think episode 31 of the podcast, I called Booms, Bubbles, and Busts, which is, I guess, the most extreme I've gotten into some of that aspect of investing and, everything from tulip bulbs to Beanie Babies, as are the most common, I think, examples there. So other insights, though, on investing, we don't have a ton that has been talked about on the show. So what are some high level things, that people should know when it comes to behavior and investment?
Yeah. So the laws of wealth was really prompted by a pre-commitment device that I was recommending to some advisors. When you work with a financial professional, they have something called an investment policy statement, or an IPS. And it basically says, I, your advisor, will adhere to the following rules in sort of the trustworthy management of your assets, which good, right on, great. But what I was recommending was, one of the biggest points of failure in the advisor-client relationship is the advisor is doing what they ought to do, but the client is panicking and becoming emotional and things. So I said, look, here's the research on pre-commitment devices. You should have a behavioral policy statement that you sign. And so it's really kind of a partnership. The advisor, here's the things I'm going to do, but then the client says, here's the things that I'm going to do. And so an advisor said, well, what would go on your behavioral policy statement? And it ended up prompting this reflection of sort of like this I believe about markets and human behavior. So the laws of wealth is sort of my 10 commandments of investor behavior, if you will. And it talks about, the power of behavioral principles, like having a coach. We know that people who work with someone like a financial advisor have on average 2.7 times the wealth of those who don't, even when you control for things like income. And it comes down to behavioral reasons because it's just like keeping people out of their own way. I mean, it's all the things that you talk about on your show. It's not that advisors have any special insights into markets. It's not even what people think advisors are good for. In fact, if you look at what people value in a financial advisor, it's actually the place where the advisors add almost no value. And then the things that they aren't looking for are actually quite valuable. So, we talk about everything from sort of herding and crowd movements like you did in your earlier episode, to the power of an external, source of advice, to things like automation, to sort of the nitty gritty of picking stocks and funds. So it's a pretty sweeping book. And then the behavioral investor was sort of this deeper dive on neurology, physiology, environment, all these sort of externalities that I thought there was basically a gap in the literature around. I didn't think people were thinking enough about things like sleep and things like nutrition and things like environment, and even the people you surround yourselves with respect to financial decision making. So among other things, it's a deeper dive on some of these externalities that I think are incredibly important and often overlooked.
Awesome. So there is an episode on pre-commitment that I've done on the show before. And I know you said herding in there. So I'll be linking to those. I also think you didn't call it out specifically, but you're sort of getting close to that like counterfactual, prefactual thinking problem, right? So when you're in that investment space and starting to think of all the what ifs or why didn't I, seemed like it was relevant. So I have notes to link those episodes in the show notes too. Then also what I hear from you is kind of the overarching tip is kind of in that hot, cold empathy gap. Don't get too wrapped up in the moment, and having the coach is important, even if it's that it keeps you from making those bad emotional decisions. Don't make emotional decisions about investing is like the top, 300,000 foot view of like some top advice.
Yeah. If I just had to give super quick advice, advice point number one would be to automate. I looked at some meta-analyses of automation in finance versus discretionary decision-making. And it was, I believe, 94% of the time just doing nothing, and sort of automating your process beats making a decision, even among the highly educated in these things. So, automation can't be overstated how important that is. And then the second piece is get some help, get that impartial third-party advice. There's lots more to be said beyond that. But yeah, if you do those two things correctly, if you automate and have a process, and get that third party opinion, that's pretty dang good.
Well, and hey, good news. That means like do less stuff, right? You don't worry about it. Let it kind of run itself once you make some early on decisions, which the decision is get a third party to help you. So you don't have to get all sucked into the drama of it all, which, relies on our own status quo bias. It's an interesting thing that comes to mind for me now, and I don't know if any of your work digs in on this, but is there a reason why that you know of so that status quo being, we're all really prone to that status quo living, that we want to just let things go as they are, but investing feels like it's kind of counter to that rule, right? Because we feel like we need to be getting our fingers into that and are constantly feeling this pull to be doing something. Any reason that you've come across as to why that really kind of bucks tradition of how we make so many other decisions?
Well, it's interesting. I talk in the book about what I call Wall Street bizarro world. And I think that one of the reasons why folks have such a hard time investing is because it's so counterintuitive, as you've stated, and things that serve us well in other parts of our lives serve us poorly in investing sometimes. So like action bias in a lot of respects, it works. If you want to get stronger, lift more weights. If you want to be smarter, listen to more podcasts, read more books, whatever. But then in every country where it's been studied, 19 different countries that I looked at, the more you trade, the worse you do. You can even look at investing as one of those rare places where the completely unknowledgeable routinely outperform the knowledgeable. I mean, if you diversify into 2 broadly held index funds and contribute a little money every 2 weeks and never touch it, you will beat almost every Ivy League educated hedge fund manager on the planet. And the fact that you can do that with relative ease and consistency, it doesn't compute, right? We think that complex dynamic systems like the market have to be met with a level of dynamism and complexity as well, and they just don't. I mean, there's sort of an overfitting problem here where it feels like we've got to get complicated for it to work, but the only thing to do in the face of massive complexity is to just break it down to the nuts and bolts.
Interesting. Yeah, that's obviously our herding instinct does not serve us well in investing, and because then people tend to be kind of behind. You're always too far behind by the time you see it and go to jump on board. Which any thoughts on? We haven't talked too much. I've had a couple people that have been willing to touch on cryptocurrency and haven't really talked much about NFTs yet on the show. Any thoughts or insights on any of that?
Well, at a high level, I think one of the most powerful formulas for whatever we want to call it, extreme investor sentiment, is when you pair the ability to get rich quickly with something that has sort of a moral underpinning. So if you look at things like the meme stock mania from, during the thick of COVID, yes, people were getting rich, right? Like people were making a lot of money, that the prices were growing rapidly, but also there was this sort of underlying narrative of like, we're getting rich and we're doing it by sticking it to the man. We're doing it by kind of giving it back to the hedge funds that took our parents' houses during the great financial crisis. And I mean, Bitcoin is the same thing. Not all, but many Bitcoin enthusiasts are of a particular philosophical stripe that has to do with sort of libertarian political thinking. Many of them even follow the same sort of diet and exercise regimen. So there's this whole sort of philosophical underpinning to Bitcoin as a moral good and as a way to disintermediate what's rightfully ours, that I think you combine what's effectively a religion with the opportunity to get rich quickly, and you have something enormously powerful on your hands. So to me, that 1-2 is sort of the secret sauce of Bitcoin. It's that combo of religion and the religion of wealth.
Interesting. When Rachel Laws was on the show, who's an expert in semiotics. She was talking about GameStop and the whole investing situation that happened there. So we'll definitely be linking to that in the show notes. So now that we've talked about that aspect of your work, the reason that we're here today at this particular point is, so we'd been connected on LinkedIn, but didn't really know each other. And then you had posted that you did a thing that so many people strive for, kind of in the same investing world, right? Our optimism bias says we should be able to do this because we know it happens and no one ever does, but you did go viral with a tweet. Tell us about this whole process and experience, kind of what happened. And I guess where was your Twitter before? What's happened since? Let's go back to the beginning of time, the BV, right? Before virality, I guess, in this way. And then we'll go through the journey.
Perfect. So I've been on Twitter for some time. The exact number of years escapes me, but 12 years or something, quite a while. I'm fairly active on Twitter, and I have a respectable following, 30-ish something thousand followers, right? And this is from my behavioral finance work. These are primarily advisors and sort of adjacent folks who follow me for boring market talk, the occasional picture of my kids, and the occasional dad joke. So that's sort of the setup is I have a good, not great Twitter following, and I'm fairly active. So a few months ago, I started having horrible dental pain. I had been clenching my teeth really badly, long story, but I cracked a tooth. So I cracked a healthy tooth. And it was super painful. We didn't know what it was forever. I had all these migraines and it was just really gnarly, really painful. It took forever to figure out because the tooth there's nothing wrong with the tooth. I just cracked it. So anyway, when I finally figure it out, I'm I never want to go through that again. So I need to make some better decisions, some better health decisions. And one of the most obvious ones was I drank a truckload of Diet Coke. And that's, clearly not great for your teeth. And so, the dentist says, look, here's the thing you do. You get a night guard and stop drinking so much Diet Coke. So sure enough, I quit. And the first couple of days are horrific. You have headaches and I was drinking tons of Diet Coke, but I shake it. I feel, I feel okay. But then one day I was sitting there and I'm all these people have told me, if you stop drinking Diet Coke, you're going to lose 20 pounds. You're going to up your deadlift at the gym. Life's going to be, all these sort of wonderful things are going to accrue to you. And it occurred to me in this moment that, besides maybe having better teeth or whatever, not much was different. I didn't feel healthier. I didn't feel better. I didn't feel bad, but it just, I had just kind of missed out on my daily treat, which felt like this sort of low stakes, guiltless, indulgence, right? To have it's been a long day, get a big Diet Coke and, it feels sort of sin free or whatever. And so I tweeted out something to the effect, and it was this kind of snarky tweet about hey, I quit Diet Coke a month ago and here are the things I've observed in my health. And it was, something to the effect of my one source of joy is gone. I have nothing to look forward to. I haven't lost a pound. I can't remember exactly what I said, but this sort of thing. And then it just, it went crazy. So the first day, I looked at the end of the first day and it had 8 million views, which, which was incredible.
Yeah.
And I was actually out in Utah. Visiting my in-laws at the time. And the next afternoon, we were at a minor league baseball game. So I'm at a Salt Lake Bees game. And my phone just starts blowing up with people who are texting me Elon Musk ! And Elon Musk had responded to my tweet and was talking about how much he loved Diet Coke and how it was the perfect accompaniment to popcorn in a movie. And Elon Musk's mom tweeted it and was talking about it. She, now model, former nutritionist. And then it just went crazy to the point that later on that day, it had 32 million views and over 500,000 likes and retweets. And it just really went truly crazy.
Yeah. And I like that the 8 million views isn't the crazy part, right? Which I'm sure you're like, whoa. And then, yeah, Elon Musk chimes in and then that goes crazy. And so I believe so I was kind of digging in and looking to kind of what happened here. So Elon tweeted like 3 separate times, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
So that obviously doesn't hurt.
Right.
Were they all like one after another on the 3 Elon tweets, or did they come separated in? Did you respond to any of it and that got him talking? Like what do you even do when these are all like pouring in?
So you freak out a little bit. And I did respond, but he wasn't, I mean, when Elon Musk, he's such a polarizing individual and has such big fans and big detractors. And so anything he says is accompanied by this whole comet, trail of insanity. And so I tweeted back to him, of course, but I don't know that he was necessarily responding to me per se. He just kind of like couple of sort of off the top of his head seeming thoughts about Diet Coke and then movies and things like this. But part of what made it go so viral was that you had at least 2 camps sort of in the comments. You had big Diet Coke addicts like myself, people sort of like, chiming in about how much they love Diet Coke. And what's fascinating for me is it subsequently went viral on TikTok and Instagram, and sometimes without credit. So like you would find like some fitness influencer or something reading my tweet word for word without attribution. And it was sent to me and it had millions of, views. And so there was something about it among Diet Coke addicts that was just articulated. They've probably, like me, been told by friends and family they need to quit. They probably didn't want to. And then here I was giving them permission not to. And right. So that was, that was like a huge thing of people sort of saying, look, I knew it all along. I'm never listening to anyone who tells me to give this up because there's nothing sort of on the other end of that rainbow. But then the other group, we'll call them the health nuts, were in there talking about aspartame kills and this is going to give you cancer. And so there was a whole sort of like healthy eating, healthy living contingent that was just as vocal, and they're in there fighting with each other. And those 2 groups, I think, just, it struck something powerful in 2 very different groups of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so then because they're in there for different reasons, they're like perpetuating it being popular and talking on both sides, keeping that engine moving along. Right.
Yes.
So did your follower count go up very much in that process?
So here, this to me was the most fascinating piece. The most fascinating piece to me was follower count. Because so many people I was getting stuff. They're like, oh, you're going to double your follower count, like, overnight. I initially lost thousands of followers, for reasons that are not totally clear to me.
Yeah.
It was the most benign. Like if you're going to go viral on something very like vanilla, that was, I was happy about that because of course my work is like, what is going on? And, how does this reflect on us? And, so it was a really kind of like wholesome way to go viral, which is all you can hope for, I think. But, I initially lost followers and then I ended up about where I started. And Twitter, you can see on your personal analytics, so other people can't see this, but on your personal analytics, you can see how many followers you've gained or lost based on an individual, like as a direct result of an individual tweet. I gained 87 followers from a tweet that 32 million people saw in one day.
Aw.
And so I know it's a pitiable number, but so I just had a marketing agency reach out to me and share the results. They did a whole breakdown of the tweet, and they asked me if I would share the metrics with them. And I did. And they're like, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me because it shows that a couple of things, how fleeting our attention is. You know, what was this huge deal to me was, you know, a passing giggle for 32 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is it shows that going viral sort of in an off-brand way doesn't do much for you.
Right.
You know, I think anyone that looked at my profile would very quickly know it's just stock market nonsense, behavioral science stuff. And again, the off picture of my kids. And they were like, nah, which candidly is the right response, right? I don't want those expectations.
And it's, you know, you're not necessarily going to be posting about like quippy little like brand and Diet Coke things, right? But I think that is amazing. Is it a net 87 then? Because you said you lost thousands, then like it happened in that way, or it says that you had like 87 people that clicked to your profile then and followed you, and other things unrelated if they looked at another tweet or something before they followed or unfollowed.
Yeah. So I wish I knew my exact follower count going into the viral tweet, because I don't follow it very closely. So I know it initially went lower and then it ended up about where it started. I couldn't kind of tell you exactly. I don't know Twitter's exact mechanics for accounting for how that tweet, you know, directly leads to new followers, but I trust it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And so, 87 people off of 32 million views. And it's like, we spend so much time thinking about going viral, and then it just doesn't, at least if it's sort of out of context like this, it just doesn't help much.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about this too, and having, you know, in your investing space, and we were just talking about crypto type, you know, Bitcoin, and we didn't talk about Dogecoin, right? But it seems like you had an opportunity with Elon Musk being in there to really pivot in a way that people who were looking at it might have been turned off by if you would have started talking about investing in the comments to like loop people back into what your branding was about. Like, did you have any? And I feel like most companies would feel the need to be like, well, now let's talk about us and our real agenda now that these millions of people are watching. Did you have any pull toward that or thoughts in that direction, or just sort of sitting in awe of what was happening?
So it's a great question. So first of all, I have to say it was really uncomfortable. Like, even though my tweet was so kind of vanilla, it was uncomfortable to have the kind of the heat turned up that high and know that many people were looking at you. And there was even an industry, like a financial industry magazine, that sent out a tweet that was basically like, hey, if anyone has any dirt on Daniel Crosby, like, now's the day to spill it. Kind of thing. And it was just like, ooh, like, it was just kind of strange to just feel like kind of the eyes of so many people were on you. So that was sort of one emotion or experience that was going on then. My work, so the marketing department at work and our external PR agency and I kind of had a huddle. And again, like, I'm at a baseball game. So I'm like, and then, you know, afterwards at a museum. So I'm at a museum in Salt Lake in like the basement trying to have this sort of war room meeting with our marketing folks. And they, we sort of had that conversation like, hey, is there a way that we can use this attention and kind of turn it back on what we do? And the answer we came to was no, because, we're this niche technology platform for financial advisors. It has nothing to do with Elon Musk. It has nothing to do with Diet Coke. And so we felt like trying to torture it in that direction would be so sort of opaquely goofy and ham-handed that it would just backfire. And I have my settings, I have my notifications on Twitter such that I only see exchanges between myself and mutuals, like people who I follow back. So 99% of the hundreds of thousands of comments I never saw and kind of had the sense not to look at. But you could see a world in which I try and make it about my business, about me, about something that helps me, and people really turn on that. I put a couple of joking tweets about Coke and tagged Coke, because I didn't tag Coke in the original tweet, but tagged Coke and said like, hey, like you can send my check here, kind of like joking about getting paid. And then a lot of people tweeted at Coke and were like, yes, like pay that, like pay this man, like think what you just got an endorsement from the richest person in the world. You need to pay this guy. Yeah. And so it was interesting to see that, but that was the closest I got to any sort of self-promotion. And it was pretty transparently like unserious.
Right. Yes. That's, I recently wrote an article for Inc. That was about the brand lessons from the Michelob Ultra guy. So this was like right around the same time. I don't remember which happened first.
He did. And he got a much better gig. The guy holding the beer watching golf, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll link to my article in the show notes as well. But so it was watching where Tiger Woods was at the PGA Championship, I think, and everyone's on their phone and like watching through the phone, and there's just the one guy who's standing there, and they kind of joke, it's like label out, perfectly placed, watching Tiger where everyone else is on the phone. And I forget the exact phrasing of, so Michelob Ultra then makes an ad of it that's of the panning across the photo, and it's like some champions play in the moment, like others live in it, and it's like focused on this like random guy that's just standing there watching. And his name is, I feel like I'll throw this out and say Jeff, because Jeff, I know a friend who will listen to this and appreciate it, but it's like Jeff the guy is watching, right? I forget what his actual name is, Dan or whatever, but just the guy that's watching. And then Michelob, and so but they created it, turned it into a commercial. As I said in my article, they have no obligation to give this guy anything, because at any of these events, 100%, you signed something somewhere saying they can use your image however they want, in whatever version, in all of perpetuity and time, and you get nothing, right? It's any event you go to, I promise you signed something that says that. But so many comments were like, you better have found this guy. Like if you didn't, like, we're going to be so angry. It's like the tweets are just raging about if they didn't, but they found the guy, tracked him down, gave him a deal of like, and they made shirts and custom cans with his image on it and hats that they were selling. And they created a Twitter account for him of the real Michelob Ultra guy or whatever. So yeah, a little bit different. Maybe Diet Coke has more notoriety than Michelob Ultra, or what, that they didn't care as much.
So it's interesting. I think what it was, so the Michelob Ultra guy gets this great setup. The gentleman drinking the ocean spray on the longboard, I don't know if you remember this, listening to Fleetwood Mac a couple years ago. There's this guy just like carving on his longboard, listening to Fleetwood Mac and drinking Ocean Spray like from the bottle. And he was like really down on his luck. Like I feel like he was like housing insecure or something. They like bought him a new truck and gave him all this money. So for me, Coke, I got a LinkedIn in-mail from an intern at Diet Coke's external PR agency. And they're like, thanks for the tweet. We'd like to send you some Coke. They sent me a 24-pack and 2 6-packs to my work because I was creeped out and didn't want to give them I was like, I don't know who this is. Like, so I just gave them my work address. And so they sent me like $20 worth of Coke, Diet Coke to my work address, which I'm not even drinking. So,
well, I think it's also because we'll say it's because they're respecting that your tweet was about not drinking Diet Coke anymore, right? So we'll say where the others are embracing their love of the thing, you were embracing your love of it while you have given it up. We'll say that's why.
I think if we want to if we want to dive deeper on this than we should, I think the reason, at least partially the reason why they weren't more receptive is because sort of implicit in my message was the acknowledgement that it's not good for you. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was saying like, look, it hasn't helped me much, but I think there was sort of a negative tinge to mine, whereas these other folks are just enjoying it, like full on.
They're guzzling their Ocean Spray.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, no, it is just all across the way, very fascinating to see and observe. And like you said, yours was this interesting kind of like juxtaposition of love of a thing that you shouldn't, in that way. But so I bet Elon got sent more Diet Coke than you did.
Probably. The rich get richer.
Oh, that's so funny. I will say too, I think as for anyone who wants to go test and try to have their own viral tweet. So one, I will definitely link to the tweet in the show notes, and I will go back and find it and read the exact when I do the outro, so you can hear, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when I record the outro for the episode. But it does a really nice job of, we've all seen, like you said, that like over the top tweet or thing that people say where it's like, oh, my skin is clearer, my life is happier, I'm amazing, dreams are made, whatever. So you're expecting that's what you're going to read of like, and you still read those of like, for people who do drink too much soda, and then you see the thing and you're like, well, like is there some benefit I haven't seen yet that is going to finally help me get off of the, Diet Coke wagon or whatever. And then the things you listed are like just making fun of it in a way that's like so perfectly phrased that it's like the flip of everything that everyone usually says. Right. So it was just funny. Like, it's surprising that I think there's some of that like dopamine that you get from it, and then you want to look smart and share to somebody else. It makes you laugh. It's funny, but it is, like you said, still vanilla. Good thing you didn't tweet about vanilla Coke. I feel like that is where the lines would have been drawn, because I feel that's even more polarizing of a topic.
So delicious. So good.
Oh, you like vanilla Coke? My husband.
I love vanilla Coke. Yeah, I love vanilla Coke Zero.
Oh, well, see, there we go. Whereas my husband's like, vanilla Coke for anything? Absolutely not. It's a terrible thing to do. So, perfect. Well, any last thoughts or insights for someone? And are you changing any of your behavior on your socials or anything from the glory of your 87 followers?
I've honestly just been really quiet, because what it showed me was how quickly things could go wrong. So if you think about most viral tweets, I mean, even my viral tweet had a little cynicism and a little edge to it. Now it's pretty like wholesome edge, but like, it had a little bit of negativity in it. And I think what was so relatable about it was that everybody has had that experience of trying to quit a bad habit and not being able to, or quitting it and not having the desired result. And so I think it was something people could empathize with, but a lot of the way that tweets go viral is they're controversial or they're negative or they're sort of bombastic. And it gave me, even on such a low stakes tweet, there were people saying things to me like, you're an embarrassment to your profession. Like, what kind of behavior change expert can't change his behavior, blah, blah, and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's nothing so low stakes that people on the internet can't make a big deal about it.
Right.
And so it gave me a sense of the power and the ferocity of a crowd if it had truly been about something truly controversial or important. So sort of interestingly, it's made me kind of go into my shell a bit and just not want to tweet at all.
Right. I can appreciate that. And where, it is the dark side of going viral, I guess. But a really important lesson, like you said, where be careful what you wish for, right? Like we want the going viral, but like you said, if it's in the wrong thing, you get the millions of views and lost thousands of followers is for something so random is so interesting. Like you said, and for that silly troll person that's saying that you couldn't even change your behavior. And this is why, like you said, you didn't go through and read all the comments because you should not. But that's where you want to say, like, if you read it, I said that I haven't had it for 30 days. Like, I obviously changed my behavior, guy.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sad about it, but I'm still moving on. I'm still sticking with it.
Sticking with it. Yep.
Oh my gosh. So funny. So, of course, everyone should follow you at Daniel Crosby on Twitter, even though you won't be posting anything.
No more hilarity. No, I will post.
It's totally banal. Yeah. Nothing of interest moving forward.
Exactly. Just boring market updates from now on. No. Yeah. So at Daniel Crosby on Twitter, I'm super active on LinkedIn, as you know, and then have my own podcast, Standard Deviations, where I'm hoping to get you to be a guest and talk about your new book. So that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, yes to that. We'll definitely come and do that. And we'll link to your LinkedIn and your Twitter and your books in the show notes and all of that so everyone can connect. And please do share, if you have thoughts on Diet Coke, or going viral or vanilla Coke or whatever else, or maybe something to do with behavioral science and investing. You can tweet us about that too. So look forward to seeing you there. And thank you again, Daniel, for joining me on the show to talk about this totally random thing that happened.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you again to Dr. Daniel Crosby for joining me on the show today. What got your brain buzzing in today's conversation? Before I get into my brain buzzing moment, as promised, I want to read the full language of the original tweet he posted, which was on June 8th, 2022. Funny enough, I just realized that this episode is coming out exactly 1 month later. Fun and serendipitous. I love it. Anyway, here is what it said. I used to drink tons of Diet Coke, but it has been 1 month since I've had a drop. I want to share some of the changes I've observed in myself over that time. My health is unchanged. I'm less happy. My one source of joy is gone. Thanks for encouraging me on this journey. As of pulling this a little less than a month later, this tweet has over 522,000 likes, 6,098 quoted tweets, and nearly 44,000 retweets, not to mention those posts from Elon Musk and lots of other mentions for Daniel on the internet. Though, again, he said it hasn't had a huge impact on his business or net number of followers. And for me, that is the biggest takeaway from the episode. Personally, I love this reframed perspective on what it's really like to go viral and what it means for individuals and brands. It feels like going viral is the ultimate. And if we could only find that one perfect tweet or video or TikTok dance or reel or blog post or article or feature or whatever else, that everything will magically work out. We as humans feel this need to strive for that silver bullet, the one thing that will change everything. But in reality, it's a lot of little things, a lot of the right little things that add up to a life and business that makes a difference. Don't flit around and dabble in a little bit of everything. hoping you're going to hit the sharing lottery. Instead, put in consistent work in the right places and good things will come to you. It's a natural human tendency to get bored when things don't live up to your high expectations in an unreasonable time frame, but that doesn't mean you have to be a victim of your brain's biases. That's why you're here, to understand your brain a little better and use that insight to shape the life and business you want. Know the problem you're trying to solve, who you're speaking to, where they're most likely to hang out, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, or anything else, and then show up consistently. When I was recently speaking at IIEX Europe in Amsterdam, my friend Priscilla McKinney, who was on episode 196 of The Brainy Business, did a session talking about showing up for the LinkedIn cocktail party, treating virtual networking on social media and considering every interaction as if you're speaking with a real person at a cocktail party. Since, there is a real human person, at least usually, on the other side of the conversation. And perhaps my favorite phrasing of all time, she said to not go around pitch slapping people, which is amazing. And that can all go so much further than others around you who are focused on their own message, that pitch slapping, and never listening to other people or asking them thoughtful questions. Don't sit around hoping and lamenting over that one thing that could change everything. Instead, focus on one thing you can do each day to get a little bit closer to your goals and show up where it counts so people can rely on you and your content. That's what I've done here with The Brainy Business. 4 full years of weekly episodes, 212 of them coming out every week and never missing. That's 212, well, really 209, I guess, continual weeks because we came out with 3 episodes on day 1. Anyway, yes, it takes effort, but it's so worth it and has done more than if I had done a little bit on every channel. And before we close out today's episode, I want to thank you again for listening to The Brainy Business. Whether this is your first episode with us or you've been here for all 4 years since those first 3 episodes dropped on July 6th, 2018, I appreciate you. And as mentioned at the beginning of the episode, whenever you're listening, will you pay it forward and share an episode with a friend? If you love The Brainy Business, let's share it with more people from around the world who would love to be a little more brainy. Whether it's this episode 212 with Dr. Daniel Crosby or another of your favorites from the back catalog, I would so appreciate you helping to spread the word so we hit that 600,000 download mark right now, and whatever the next milestone is whenever you're listening. None of this would be possible without you. So thank you again for listening, subscribing, sharing, rating, and leaving those 5-star reviews. I appreciate you. And as a reminder, the show notes for this episode are waiting for you in the app you're listening to and at thebrainybusiness.com/212. And just as a note, you can easily share a link to your favorite episode with a friend using that episode number after the URL like that. So thebrainybusiness.com/212 is for this episode. And if you wanted to share the most recent best of episode, it would be thebrainybusiness.com/184. Anything along those lines. In the show notes for this episode, you are going to find, of course, a link to related episodes like my conversation with Priscilla McKinney and those best of episodes I was just talking about, as well as related books like Dr. Crosby's, ways to connect with him to see that tweet. And you can see how effective it was in the way he broke down the bulleted list if you still want to try to go viral and have some good sharing and things like that, and so much more. Again, it's all waiting for you at thebrainybusiness.com/212. Thank you again to Dr. Daniel Crosby for joining me on the show today. It was a delight to chat with and learn from you. Join me next week for another brainy episode of the Brainy Business Podcast, kicking off year 5 of the podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun. You won't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Melina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.